Welcome to Offside Hockey Talk. No suits, no script, just fan hockey talk. What's going on? We're debuting a new format tonight. It's going to be a little crinkly, a little rough around the edges. We got our guy David Morassutti coming on just in a little bit here. We're going to get to the fresh sheet, the Snipes and Scrubs, the social slapshots of the week. And trust me, Darren Ferris is taking the brunt of this one. Of course, the guest bench, like we said, with David, and then our final shots. All right, you guys have been around the show long enough to know it needed a refresher. It needed to be revived and kicked up to a different notch. So we finally got it done. Shout out to ChatGPT for helping a guy out who didn't know how to do any of this. And by the way, I've taken a lot of heat for the way that I do things for my social media and everything for hockey. Want to let you know, I didn't go to school for it. I don't know how to do it professionally. I do it for fun, and I do it because I love it. So if you're tuning in, you followed along, you liked the video, you did anything for me, I appreciate you, and we're going to kick it up a few notches and have some fun going forward. So let's get into the sheet right here. The biggest headlines in Leafland, we know what it is. It's JT, it's Nyes, it's Marner, and we'll get to some of that with our guy David Morassutti, who's been on the show many, many times. But for me, I'm talking about JT right now. This guy wants to win, wants to be a Maple Leaf. And if I had the option, I'd probably strip that C off of Matthews' chest and put it back on John Tavares. And why? This guy said the right things in the media. I left money on the table, probably could have got more elsewhere. But hey, I've made enough money. Let's get the deal done. I want to be here. I want to help this team win. And I believe that this team can do things and go further. They could definitely go further now, Mr. John Tavares, with you on a 4-year deal at $4.38 million. That is a beautiful chef's kiss to Brad Treliving. And we're going to be talking about Brad. It's the summer of Tre coming up. Maybe it'll be the summer of double Brad. Who knows? As another Brad may make his way to town. But then you got Matthew Nyes. And this one here, I don't know if you're with me on this, but the media was kind of whipping this one up, that it was going to be an 8-year, $10 million kind of deal. It was going to be something the Leafs weren't going to be able to stomach. Hell, even Brad Treliving himself said there may be an offer sheet and the Leafs might have to expect that. And then boom, all of a sudden, you got Mr. Matthew Nyes signed for a tidy 6 years, under $8 million. This guy is a Gronk. I think he's a superstar in the making. He's obviously showing us why he can do the things he does. Also can show you why he's going to be a key piece of the Maple Leafs going forward. I'm hoping that he doesn't get a fat contract and, it goes to the belly and slows him down for the year. I think you see Matthew Nyes as a constant 30-goal, 30 assists, 60-point kind of guy that plays the physical brand of hockey, brings it in the playoffs, brings the energy, brings the noise, and does everything the Maple Leafs want him to do. Now, that being said, obviously, we don't know exactly what Matthew Nyes is. It's like the Nathan McKinnon contract back in the day. I know they're not the same players, I understand. But you're betting on this player being really, really good and being able to elevate his game when it's needed the most, which is in the playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course. And he showed that against the Ottawa Senators, then again against the Florida Panthers. And he came back in that Game 7 and played injured and not feeling that great. That's a guy. That's a warrior. That's someone you want in your lineup, and that's someone you pay the do-re-mi for. So I'm liking the fact the Maple Leafs were able to get that deal done before July 1st. Now they know exactly what they have for cap space to go after whoever they want to sign, whether it's Bradley Marchand, whether it's Steven Lorentz to add to that fourth line, get him re-signed and back in there, whether it's Mr. Tanev to play with his brother. There's a lot of different factors and things that can go into this roster now that you have those two key pieces locked in and ready to go. But for me, the key moments around this were the reactions. The reactions from Biz when JT signed. The reaction from Biz when Nyes signed. And if you're wondering what the look was at, my little one just walked through the door over here, folks. It's always fun in the Roberts household when you're doing these kind of things. I had to give her the old finger because it's time to go back to bed. And I don't mean this finger, just so you know, it's the point, the dad point. So if you're dad, you know what I'm talking about. But getting these deals done, you have everybody, the euphoria. It was a bad taste in your mouth from Game 7. This gives you hope, gives you feeling, makes you feel good. You got JT back 4 more years, Nye's back, and now you have a plan. And also, for once in a very long time, like Biz said, the Leafs weren't taken to the cleaners in negotiations. They were actually able to get some very stomachable contracts for guys that were considered key parts of this lineup. 38 goals for JT last year. Did you think anyone that he was signing for 4.38? No. The media had you believing he was going to free agency and he could get 7, 8, maybe even more million on the open market for some team that was desperate. JT knew that, signed the deal. So for me, I'm loving the fact that they got these things done. Now, I'll talk about this all day long. Who cooked and who got cooked? Brad Treliving, baby. He cooked. He went in the kitchen, cooked up these deals, and got it done. But not only that, he's also dealing with the Marner situation right now. And I'm saying he's cooking with that one too, because the way he's handling the fact that Vegas wants to get in there, and it looks like Mitch is going to Vegas, and he's talking about, hey, the whispers, all the GMs, Elliot Friedman's talking about it, the tampering aspect that's there. To me, he's putting it on the table and saying, listen, if you want to mess around, if you want to F around, you're going to find out, because we will tell the league. And the league apparently is just salivating, just waiting for the moment to be able to go after a team for these tampering things. So the Leafs are like, hey, you want to send us a couple of players, maybe the old tampering thing goes away. But then it's still up to the NHL, maybe if they want to go pursue something about this. But beyond that fact, maybe the Maple Leafs say, no, we're good if you get a Nicholas Roy and you get a nice Mr. Hag. A lot of people not excited about that, but if you're getting something that was supposed to be nothing, I'm all right with it. And Roy, whatever you want to call him, however the name is going to be pronounced this side of the border, he will fit nicely on the third or fourth line for the Toronto Maple Leafs at $3 million for the next 2 seasons. Another guy that is a useful player in this lineup, someone you're looking for as well, because you have your Scott Laughton, you have now possibly Waugh coming in, or Roy, however you want to say it, on that third or fourth line. It allows you to do what you need to do. But for Darren Ferris, this has to suck. It absolutely has to hurt, because now you're going, hey, he's going to go to Vegas. He's going to sign over in Vegas, and this is what's going to happen. Okay, cool. But at the same time, how is that all going to happen there, Darren? How is it already in place and ready to go if you haven't done anything and talked to the Vegas Golden Knights? So now all of a sudden, there's a lot of punishments that can come out if the Leafs go that route. And you'll see them. They're all over social media. It can go from fines to draft picks to compensation to contracts being voided to the player actually getting fined $1 million and suspended himself. So these things all can happen. So for Brad Treliving, he just said, hey, listen, I got the stones to make sure, A, I'll do what I need to do with my players, and B, this guy's still under contract with us. You will not tamper with him unless you want to do a sweet sign and trade. And now I guess the LA Kings and other teams are trying to get their foot in the door as well. Mitch probably won't go to any of those teams. It's definitely sounding like he's going to be a Golden Knight. So I hope the Leafs get some things that they want to help this roster move forward. But we shall see. But that's the fresh sheet right there. That's the news that is the hottest, the freshest. The Zamboni just left the ice. Fresh sheet right there for you. Now we're getting into a little Snipes and Scrubs. This one's quick. It'll be quick every week. It'll be something maybe 2 to 5 minutes where we talk about the fact when the season's going. Who's hot, who's not, basically. Who's sniping, who's a scrub, not playing the way they should be. But right now we'll talk about the offseason stuff. And right now, for me, the sniper, that's JT. Taking a discount, being with the Maple Leafs, making the fans happy, announcing it on his foundation page, really doing it well, doing it smart, but also saying, hey, I could have got more money. Letting Leafs Nation know I'm taking a discount, and maybe that resounds in some other players' ears. I'm not talking about Marner, but other guys who come to this franchise or want to sign with this franchise and say, hey, let's build a winner here with the Maple Leafs. I know this is JT's third or fourth contract, but the fact that he's made his money, people will say that's why he did this. He didn't have to. He could have went and chased the bag again, got paid, sailed off in the sunset, making $7 or $8 million a year. He didn't. So for me, he's the snipe right now. The scrub, well, the scrub, we all know who that is. Okay? I'm not saying Mitch Marner's a scrub. He was great when he was here, played for the Maple Leafs, did all kinds of good things on and off the ice for the Maple Leafs. He wants more money. He wants to be the highest paid guy. He wants all this stuff. Feels butthurt because they asked him to trade himself to the Carolina Hurricanes, but didn't want to do that because obviously having a child and all that stuff, I understand. But also, you don't want to sign a contract. They have the rights to come to you and do their due diligence and say, hey, we want to trade you to Carolina. Will you go? But it's not him that I have the issue with. It's Darren Ferris. We all know the MO with this guy and the way that he operates and does things. To me, this week, that's my scrub. He just really, really rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And hey, maybe that means he's doing his job. Maybe he's doing it right. Because if you're an agent and you're rubbing guys and everything the wrong way, usually means you're getting the best for your client because people don't like dealing with you. I think the guy's name is Boris in baseball. A lot of people don't like dealing with him because he goes after the bag for his clients as well. So, Darren Ferris, you're my scrub this week, buddy. Best of luck to you and Mitchie over in the Vegas Golden Knight land. I hope it goes well for you guys. I really do. Mitch, tip of the cap to you. Did everything he could as a Maple Leaf. Unfortunately, you didn't show up when we need you the most, but that's just the way that it goes sometimes, unfortunately, when you're a player in this thing. So, I mean, fan moment for this week. I mean, everybody's just talking about the fact of what Tre did. Tre, without Shanahan's handcuffs on him, was able to get some things done and get deals done. It wasn't like Dubas where he was just handing out money like they had a printing machine down to Scotiabank Arena. So for me, the fan reaction for everything is based around Brad Treliving. Now, I hope he keeps cooking when free agency opens. I'm really hoping that what Biz said about Brad Marchand, isn't fully true. I hope it is a 4-year deal. I just hope it's not $9 million per year for a 37-year-old Brad Marchand. That is a little rich for my blood. We'll ask David when he comes on here in just a few minutes what we think of that one. But that right there is your Snipes and Scrubs. So we're going to get into the social slap shots of the week. This will be fun when the season is cooking. And for me, this will be just bad takes from people. This will be good tweets from people. Just things that really captivated the Leafland audience or hockey as a whole, because sometimes there are some good topics that get out there. But for me, I mean, summer of Brad Marchand. And why do I say that? Well, mention Biz to say that he should go to the Maple Leafs. We just talked about that a moment ago, about the 4x9. For me, it's fun watching Brad Marchand, and I don't know if he's trolling Leaf fans or not, but if you watched his IG stories, he shouted out all the teams that gave players to the Florida Panthers, and there was a couple of Maple Leaf tags that could have been added there, but they weren't. He didn't take the shot at the Maple Leafs when he had the opportunity to, and Brad is not one to hold back. So I don't know if that's just playing his cards close to his chest and saying, hey, listen, I don't want to ruffle any feathers over there in case that's where I want to go. But he had no problem taking shots at the Boston Bruins. No problem taking shots at any other team in the NHL. Heck, he even took a couple swipes at a couple AHL teams as well. The Syracuse Crunch, he waved and said hi. So for me, I'm laughing at this and saying, you know what? Is this the summer of Brad Marchand? Does he go full villain mode and get himself over to the Toronto Maple Leafs and really unite himself with, I guess, what would hockey fans say outside of Toronto, the dark side? Even the Leafs morning take, or I forget what it is, Leafs latest or whatever it was. I want to give them the proper shout out. I don't remember the top of my head right now. But they had the post where they said, hey, Brad Marchand should come to the Maple Leafs. And he, still on his Stanley Cup absolute high, said, they want to see it, dog. And everybody's like, Brad Marchand doesn't say that. It was a certified Brad Marchand account. So yes, dog, we want to see you as a Toronto Maple Leaf. I think it would be wicked to see him in the playoffs with the Leafs. Mix in maybe a little Corey Perry as well. Ooh, could we have some scrummage and some fun with that? But this segment too is user generated. I want to know from you guys. Drop me a DM. Drop me a text. Many of you in this little industry have my phone number. Drop me a text. Drop me a DM. Doesn't matter where. Let me know what you want me to put up here. Show me a tweet. I will put it out there and I'll shout that person out if it's good. Even if it's bad, hey, I'll say, listen, this was not it. And I'll shout out who that person was. But yeah, give me the heat. Let me hear it. I want to see it. We'll put it out here all season long, all off season long. I'm going to get fired up for it. All right. So enough of me rambling on. This will go on a little longer throughout the season. We'll get up to the probably 20-minute mark. But I got my good friend sitting in the wings. I see him listening to me. I know he's going to be chomping at some of these things we were talking about. So I'm going to bring him on. His name is David Morassutti. He is the co-host of Locked On Leafs. He is one of the greatest minds in hockey, and he's probably shaking his head at me saying that. But guess what? I love the way this guy approaches the game, and I love listening to Locked On Leafs. If you're not subscribed and tuning in, get in there. They got to beat the Ottawa Senator guys and keep their numbers above theirs. But without further ado, my friend and a great guy for hockey, David Morassutti.
Greatest mind in hockey. Yeah. I appreciate the tire pumping, but give me CFL. Greatest mind in the CFL. I'll take that.
Ooh, greatest mind in the CFL. All right, I'll give you greatest mind in the CFL.
Even that might be a bit of a stretch, but man, it's good to be on. I've missed these times to talk, man. It's great. Great to be
Listen, it is always weird when you're working out kinks and things. I mean, I told you before you came on that I'd be trying this out.
Yeah.
It's going to get better. It'll get ironed out. It'll sound a lot better. But right now, it's just kind of stumbling your way through the weeds, I guess. But I mean, the numbers aren't doing too shabby right now. 207 sitting live watching. So we'll take that every step of the way.
Shout out to the Leafs Nation faithful. Absolutely.
All right. So, David, lots going on. Let's get the guests on the bench chat going. All right. Everybody knows you from Locked On Leafs. So like I said, go follow them. Make sure you're on that show and listening. They are your daily Leafs podcast for all your Leafs news, part of the Locked On Network. There's the free plug. All right. So we have JT and Nye signing. What do you think of the deals? What are your instant gut reactions? You heard me blather on. I want to hear yours.
The thing I love the most about these deals is how wrong people were about them. Because we kept hearing there's no way John Tavares was going to take a penny under 5, right? And we heard that
penny under 5. I heard a lot of people saying 6, 5, 7.
Yeah, I mean, I heard people say he could get $8 million on a shorter term deal in free agency, right?
The Brock Nelson kind of contract is what I kept hearing.
Yeah, and it would have been fair, right? The guy scored 38 goals. He was pretty much a point per game player last year, and so I will start with JT first, obviously because he got it. He kind of got the ball starting. I heard some of the things you're saying. I think he's been the true professional his entire time in Toronto, right?
Oh, consummate professional.
Yeah, that's the perfect word right there. That's JT right there. Now, has there been maybe sometimes some things left to be desired? Sure. I mean, no player is ever going to be perfect. So there's always going to be something you can nitpick at. But I think what the Leafs essentially did here with JT was say, we know you want to stay here. We would like to have you back, but this is the number we can do it at. This is the number that makes us most comfortable because there's other things that this team wants to do and be able to do, and they won't be able to do it if everyone's going to be asking for a certain price. And you heard a lot, and a lot of people said, this was essentially like I guarantee John Tavares' agents told them, we don't recommend you taking this. This is not the best deal you can get. But for John Tavares, it's like, well, this is the deal I want because I get to stay in Toronto. And we heard him say, I left money on the table. And so there's a realization on his part about that. I think it's just, but you can see how important it was for him to make mention of that because I think he really wanted people to know that this is where he wanted to be. So I think that's the first and foremost. And then you get the Matthew Nyes one. And it's kind of, we know these two have that relationship. And so you can't tell me that Matthew Nyes wasn't fired up to see John Tavares coming back. And to get Matthew Nyes signed at 7.75 over 6 years. And now look, I know people are going to nitpick and say, couldn't get 8 years out of the deal. 6 years is a long time, guys. It's a long time. Take the victory there that you get a guy signed at that price because, again, what were we hearing? It could be 8. It could be 9. 10. We heard some people say, it could be 10, right? Yeah, maybe the Leafs had to sacrifice a bit on the term and not get the full 8 years, but you got to be happy with 6 because 6, I said, maybe they got to do a 4 or 5 year deal just to get a lockdown, right? And it's also, you look at where this puts Matthew Nyes when he wants to get himself his next payday, right? Because essentially, he's 22, maybe 23. this gets him to that prime point in his career where he can still go out and get his money. So I think this is, again, another one of those Brad Treliving things where he says, look, we will pay you. We will give you what we think you're worth. Work with us a bit here, right? And I think we heard, the negotiations were being tough. Maybe they have to be tough for a change. You would want to hear that negotiations are tough because that means the Leafs are really trying to get something that's also going to work for them. Because how many times we heard where it felt like the Leafs bent to what the star player wanted, right? Just to make the player happy and have them back. I'm not saying it's for sure.
Way too many times where the Leafs basically got bent over a barrel. And I wanted to shout out the John Tavares contract.
Yeah.
There was a lot of parallels drawn by some people that, hey, the Matt Duchene deal should be the benchmark. And shout out to our boy Jim Behringer because he was one of the ones who said that should be the benchmark, that should be the setting. And we all, even you and me, I bet you said the same thing. It's going to cost more in Toronto because of the fact there's no state tax. And by the way, everybody's saying that that's a nothing thing, a fugazi, wazi, oozy. Please park that biscuit because no state tax does help in resigning guys. Okay, this one worked out for the Maple Leafs where they got some deferred money and all that good stuff for JT. But shout out to Jim Behringer on the JT deal. I got to let him know, man.
Yeah, and look, I think John Tavares has been here, so he knows he just got the win in his CRA battle right over that tax situation. So maybe feeling a little bit better about himself, saying, okay, we figured out ways to make this work. And signing bonuses, you can still do the signing bonus structure that works out that eventually I think is not going to be in this next CBA. So take advantage now while you have it.
No, it definitely is. 100%. You got to take advantage where you take advantage for everything, but you got the deferral, signing bonuses. Now, that's something Jesus, man. It seems like the rich teams or the teams that don't have the income stack, the tax stuff going on, they were using that signing bonus as a mechanism to be able to get themselves, a player signed or say, hey, this is what we can offer. We can't offer you state tax, and we can offer you this here, which is the signing bonus. And there's a lot of players throughout the NHL that don't want to be moved from a no tax state to another state that has higher tax. It was reported by Elliot Friedman. Gentleman in Nashville didn't want to leave Nashville because they didn't want to go somewhere with a higher tax state because they signed that deal in good faith to have that money. So it is a mechanism that helps. It's not the only tool in the toolbox, as I've long said, but it is a tool nonetheless that helps work, just like the Leafs and the other rich teams use the lovely signing bonus to help guys. But I look at these two contracts and say, that's great. That is absolutely great. So I ask you, David, is this the summer of Tre?
I think it's a start, but
no more of these. Look, no more of these by Shanahan.
I think, you know what? I think you see that, the Marner one is a big one for me. To me, that's just breaking free of, having to pay all these guys so much money. And it's not a formula that works anymore. We heard this last year. Let's not forget, there's only so much of a piece of the pie that we can pay everybody. So eventually, we gotta shift the thinking a little bit. We saw this starting a bit last year. I think this year is a continuation of that because look, you now get the salary cap going up way more than it has in past years. Your blue line's locked up because you took that initiative last year to do it. So let's now think about addressing kind of the crux of what's been the issue. And so I think True Living understands, look, there may not be a lot of top end available free agents that maybe you could have in the following year.
Yep.
So I think True Living is not going to blow out his entire budget and put himself in a position where he maybe doesn't have the room next year. But we've heard the one name. If Brad Treliving can bring Brad Marchand to Toronto, that's, I think, going to be his big win. And it might not just be Brad Marchand. It could be a bunch of other guys because Leafs now.
I'm going to ask you that question here in just a couple of minutes, who you bring in. So we'll tickle the Brad Marchand tree here for a second.
I'll say this. True Living, he looks like a guy right now that feels a lot more free, as you say, free to operate because he's just talking to Keith Pelly now. And Keith Pelly, he understands the workings of the NHL, but he's not a hockey guy. You know who the hockey guys are? It's Brad Living and it's Craig Berube. Those are the guys that are going to be making the big decisions. And with those guys making the decisions, they can now kind of inject kind of that whole DNA that we've been talking, right? Injecting sort of those different things. Now, people might not like it because they might not be the most flashy, it's not going to be the flashiest thing. But guess what? That's what teams need to do come playoff time, is have that different identity. You look at Florida, Florida's made decent moves. They've made some flashy moves, but it's to get guys that can kind of elevate things. And I think that's probably where Brad Living sees himself right now.
No, it fully is where Brad Living sees himself. And I mean, you add a Brad Marchand, you elevate your team, you do what you need to do. It's just nice to see the words backed up, though, when they said that it's going to be more of Craig Berube and Brad Living being able to run this team on the day-to-day and have more autonomy on decisions with Berube and Living. And it looks like their vision is the exact same. You look at the draft, for instance, the way they drafted, bigger, meaner, tougher guys than they usually would. So for me, that's a different change in philosophy for this organization, but it also goes back to what Pelly said. It is Berube, it is Tre Living, and they will work in unison to get things done for this team, which is great because absolutely it leads us to the fact that they are not going to have any BS about the Mitch Marner thing. That's the thing right now with Tre Living, where I'm saying, or I said it earlier, I don't know if you were agreeing with me or not, but it looks like Brad Tre Living has a set of stones right now and saying, I don't care. If you want to go to Vegas, we'll trade you there on a sign and trade, but Vegas is going to give us something. But you're not going to go and have everything in place without us going down without a fight, and we'll take it to the NHL and we'll make it something. So he has laid all his cards on the table. And it was funny. I saw a tweet. I don't know who it was from, but one person said the Leafs are using Elliot Friedman, while another said where Darren Ferris and Mitch Marner and the Vegas Golden Knights are using Darren Dreger. So it seems like both have their media kind of mouthpiece. Not saying that disrespectfully, but it just seems like both kind of have their guy where they can leak the information to and have it put out there. Because look, the way Friedge put that out today, that was very calculated. That was very structured as well, the way that he said it. So it was basically the Leafs saying, F around and find out, because we will take this to where it needs to go. But if you want to go and you want to give us a decent player or two, then maybe there wasn't no tampering that happened. I don't know. Mitch Marner did his thing. But that's the way it looks. And that's the way, and you got Darren Ferris on this, or Darren Dreger on this side, and you got Elliot Friedman on this side. And it really did. I didn't even think of that, but I looked at it, it kind of lined up, especially with the 32 Thoughts blurb today, right off the hop from Elliot Friedman, saying, I'm just a guy with a microphone in the bowels of the arena here. So I wonder what you think of that one there and how that all shook out, because it really did seem like one versus the other.
In a way. And look, I've been thinking about this tampering thing almost all day. And this only becomes a thing where, like, you think about this. Last year, the Leafs went to Vegas and tried to make a deal, potentially make a deal for Marner, and they threw Shea Theodore out there. But why Vegas, right? Why Vegas? And it makes me think that, look, Mitch Marner, we know, holds all the cards in a move, right? So they probably went to his agent and said, hey, if we want to move you, would there be a place you would waive your no moving clause to? I guarantee Vegas is probably the team that came up, right? Considering they're not approaching Vegas if they don't think that they can get a deal done with Vegas, right?
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden the trade deadline comes around and Marner now doesn't want to waive his no movement clause to go to Carolina and do that Rantanen deal. And then we hear about Vegas again going into this, like, Vegas is going to push for Marner. I'm like, how? They don't have the money. How is this going to work? All of a sudden, now the Pietrangelo stuff comes around, and then you got and then the sign and trade stuff happening. And it's like, this seems just a little too perfect, right? Then you hear the tampering stuff, and I'm like, okay, clearly Vegas has pissed the Leafs off. Like they've essentially probably told, in a way, maybe told Marner, we would, if we can make the money work, we want to bring you. And I'm sure that got Marner excited, because at this rate, who doesn't want to play for Vegas? It seems like almost everyone wants to go and play for Vegas.
Everybody goes to Vegas, man, and then everybody gets traded by Vegas a few years later or a year later, and they don't like it anymore.
Look, and in my time working with, I haven't had obviously a lot of direct rapport with Elliot Friedman, but he is, and you don't even need to work with the guy to know that he's not throwing stuff out there for just throwing it out there.
No.
Certain things maybe he would, but tampering is not going to be one of them. You don't think the league is going to go, yeah, Elliot, I don't know why you're throwing tampering out there, because like somebody would tell him no, right? He's heard this from somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody he clearly trusts to throw that out there. Now, obviously, he's keeping it very safe by saying, like, he's not saying it's going to happen, but the fact that he's bringing it up means there's a likelihood it can happen. And so if you're Vegas and Marner right now, you got to be a little careful. Like, you do have to be a bit careful with all this. Now, do I say if he signs and we're automatically going to assume that a tampering charge is going to happen? It's tough, but yeah, like the fact the league has also put this memo out there to teams to say, like, watch yourselves. And also Marner, like, if you're Marner, like, it's not just the teams, it's players too, right? Marner could be suspended. Marner can face a fine up to $1 million. There are things that are getting thrown out there and saying, watch it. Like, watch yourselves. Don't put yourself in this position, because if a team like the Leafs or if the league feels that they have to go ahead and investigate, the league, and we heard Freeman said the league would like to make an example.
Oh, they're salivating. They're just waiting for this to happen so they can definitely drop the gavel on this, because there's a lot of things that they probably are excited that they get to close loopholes on. LTIR is one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things that the league is looking at, right? So they want to make sure they get this one right as well, because going into that new CBA that was announced, they want to make sure everything's clean and tidy. This last season is the last season for basically loopholes. There was another thing that came out about no more paper transactions in the new CBA as well. You can't just send a guy down. They actually have to go and play a game in the AHL now. So there's a lot of things the league wants to make an example of. But we'll see what happens with this tampering thing. July 1st is not far away, so I want to ask you the question, David. Give me David's dream list of guys the Maple Leafs sign on July 1, or through free agency, I suppose.
All right, so I didn't think I was going to be a Brad Marchand fan at this point, but he is kind of my number one right now, because we see his impact, especially come playoff time. There's another one potentially if he, let's say Brad Marchand does go back to Florida. That kind of means that Aaron Ekblad would be available. Could the Leafs potentially look at an Aaron Ekblad deal? It might be a little rich. I think maybe other teams in those non-state tax markets could look at. We've heard.
Remember, that doesn't matter. It's just
But I'll throw out my number two, Patrick Kane.
Okay.
You want to get somebody who, like, he's literally called Showtime.
Because you understand. Imagine him and Matthews scoring a goal and doing this one like they did to each other, but together.
Who's the one guy you would love to have on Austin Matthews' wing to replace Mitch Marner? Yes, I know Patrick Kane is 36. I get it. The guy had 59 points in 72 games as a 36-year-old, finally showing that maybe the hip injury that he had is finally right for him. Like, how could you not want Patrick Kane on Austin Matthews' wing?
All right. I would take that one. For me, it's Brad Marchand or bust. I want him on this team. I don't care. I've heard enough now. I've seen enough now. Of course, we all have as Leaf fans of Brad Marchand. It'd be nice to have that tonic on our team to start messing with other teams. I wouldn't mind Patrick Kane. I think it's going to be too rich for the Leafs, to be honest. I think the bread man's going to come. I think he can Mangiapane on this team. I think he will be a nice bottom six ad. Can play up and down your lineup as well. I do think another one that's going to come, I think we're going to have the brother Tanevs on the Maple Leafs. I do think he comes to the big smoke as well and is a very effective fourth liner for the Leafs, with Steven Lorentz getting re-signed again. And I think the Leafs will add something on the depth D, but where we're starting to head towards this new CBA and teams are going to try to figure out how to work it, I think the Leafs are going to try to operate within the confines of the cap and leave themselves proper wiggle room come cap time, not LTIR stuff. So I think their teams are going to start to try to figure that out this year rather than next year. So those are my wishes, David. I can't wait for July 1. I can't wait to have you back on the other side of things when we build this roster a little bit more, know a little bit more about what's going to happen. I as always want to friggin' say thank you, man, because every time I ask you, whether it's an hour or two before or days before, you always drop whatever you're doing and come on. I know you got Argo stuff to do. So can you drop all your handles, let people know where you're at so they can follow you, because you are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to football and when it comes to hockey.
Yeah, so go follow me on X at @the_Morassutti. You will, yes, have to live with some CFL stuff on there, but also go follow us, the Locked On Leaf stuff over on X, but also on Instagram. We really want to bump up the Instagram. That's kind of, all the younger people are there, so we want to really get our footprint going there. So go and follow us there, and also make sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. We're going to be still doing 5 days a week. We're going to have a big show, obviously, with all the Leafs news that happened over the weekend and stuff that potentially could happen. So, exciting week, I think, for Leaf fans, that's for sure.
Everybody's fired up. Obviously, you got to be really fired up to go check out the Locked On Leaf boys. Always going 5 days a week, even in the summer. They're bringing it most times 3 to 4 to 5 times a week. So you always want them in your ears for your Leafs news. Make sure you go check out Offside Hockey Talk on Instagram as well, at Offside Talk. Check us out over on YouTube. Drop a subscribe. Hit the bell, please. We love it, too. We want to grow those numbers for next season. And then, of course, check us out over on the TikTok. TikTok is where all the short clips go up. If you don't want to watch the whole show, I know people don't have time sometimes, but you can hear David's beautiful voice on all the clippets, and you can see exactly what we're talking about. But Leafs fans, I appreciate you. So send over your comments, send over your DMs, hot takes, whatever you want. Drop them in either of our mailboxes, because obviously we'll talk about them. But instead of it being Offside Hockey Talk, where the Maple Leafs come to talk, it's now no suits, no scripts, just fan hockey talk. We'll catch you next time.